think we're about a week into what has turned into a national nightmare and just a very sad time for everyone. I wanted to go Instagram live, and it felt very timely to talk to my friend Paul Rucker, who's going to be joining me in a moment.
Hey,
There he
how's it
is.
going?
Hey, Paul.
How's it going? I had to give access to the microphone and camera because I've not done this before. So
Yeah, yeah.
thanks for having me, by the way.
Hey, man, I've been thinking about you a lot, and I met you through Joe Seipel, who was chairman of he was dean of the art school at VCU,
Right.
and worked with my father for 35 years. We got together, and we hit it off because you're a great person, and you really strike a chord with me. And I've told anybody that I know, and a lot of people that I don't know, that playing Cleveland has taught me so much, and made me so much more aware of things that I will never fully know. But and I'm fascinated with your work. I'm fascinated with the history that you talk about as far as race and in our country, the last 400 years, 401 years. Um, and so, why don't I just start by saying that I heard someone today, to my surprise, kind of ask why the George why this is a racial issue. So let's just
Mm.
address it in a very broad way, and then we'll go into it.
Well, I mean, my first answer to a lot of folks, this has been three events in a row, really. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and the latest, and there was another shooting today, a barbecue restaurateur in Kentucky. Police shot the restaurateur, and the police chief was fired. And it's just one after the other. And George Floyd was mainly the tipping point for everything,
Hmm.
but it's not the tipping point for the past 3 months. It's the tipping point for Philando Castile, uh, Alton Sterling, Eric Garner, Amadou Diallo, Sean Bell, Sandra Bland. I mean, I wish I could stop, but I could keep going on from the time this interview starts till it ends and not repeat a name. So there was a tipping point. And for a lot of people, like I got into this because of the Rodney King beatings. That was the first one that was fully seen by a lot of people because it was video recorded. This is before cell phones were readily available. And that's when I got started. And for next generation, it was Trayvon Martin. That was a big moment that got people going, being murdered by George Zimmerman. Now,
Hmm.
this is the newest chapter. And this is like no other one I've seen. I've been doing
Hmm.
this 27 years, and I've studied years before, but I've never seen this. And I talked with you earlier about the only thing that I've seen close to this is basically not seen but studied is Red Summer of 1919. And there was 36 race riots across the country, and it wasn't just for the summer. It lasted from January 1st of 1919 to September 24th, and there were
Explain.
hundreds.
Yeah, explain a little bit of the history and the parallels, because when we talked, you mentioned they were coming out of a pandemic as well.
Yeah, the 1918 pandemic was followed by Red Summer, the race riots. But before the end of the pandemic in 1918 was the end of World War One. Now, what happened during World War One was the Great Migration of Black folks from the South, and they went west and they filled a lot of the jobs that were vacated by a lot of the white soldiers that had left. I mean, of course, Black soldiers fought in World War One as well. So I think when the soldiers came back, they said, we want our jobs back. And the blacks refused. They said, no, because the blacks, they had prosperity, they got property. And we know what happened after that, 36 race riots. And one
Well,
of the
talk
methods that
talk
they
about what
used,
happened. A lot of people don't know what happened after
oh
that.
gosh, there were hundreds of black people massacred across the country. And the most egregious case was in Elaine, Arkansas, where more than 240 black people were killed, mostly black men. I mean, there were 43 lynchings across the country. And I actually brought some lynching postcards with me, and I'll show them to you in a minute. But the race riots across the country really weren't riots. They were mainly attack on black communities that were thriving at the moment. and there was no laws that were there to support and save Black people from being killed. It was basically legal. And in Minnesota, believe it or not, passed anti-lynching legislation in 1921 after they had an egregious lynching of 3 circus workers. I know I'm changing subject a little bit.
No, go ahead.
But basically, that anti-lynching legislation was withdrawn in 1984. Do you believe that? So the story during Red Summer, they would find any reason they could to lynch Black folks. And there was a circus that went through Minnesota, and I brought out some of my lynching cards. And apologies for the graphics, but it's no more graphic than the death of George Floyd, by the way.
No.
But there was a circus that came through Minnesota, and a white girl and her boyfriend went to the back of the circus to see the circus workers, and there were about 150 Black men working in the back. Later that evening, the white girl went home and told her dad that her boyfriend and her had been held up at gunpoint and raped by 6 circus workers. The medical examiner examined her the next day and found no evidence whatsoever, but they still lined up 150 circus workers, Black men, and she picked out 6 of them. They took those 6 to jail. They took 3 of them out of jail. A mob of 1,000 people took them out of jail and lynched them in front of 10,000 people. And I'm going to show you the lynching postcard. You can see this okay. This is them on the one side being 2 are against a tree and 1's on the ground. And on the other side is the crowd of 10,000 people. This is before Photoshop. And also during that time, I'm going to show you the other lynching postcard to get it out of the way.
Yeah, and I just want to tell you, I've seen a lot of people just join. I'm talking with Paul Rucker, who is an artist and a musician and a very good friend. And as I said in my post, you're an encyclopedia of racial history. And but I just want to kind of frame what you're talking about here. That these were in your exhibit that that I saw, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. But so meaningful. So I don't mean to cut you off. I'm just trying to frame you for whoever's listening here.
No, if you came into the middle of this and I'm holding a lynching postcard, it could be quite confusing.
Yeah, people are like, "Where's the big actor that I've seen in a bunch of movies talking about how he made it?" Yeah. But and you're at VCU now. Are you? What are you? Are you a fellow? I don't know the titles of.
I'm an IQ'd research fellow. I was brought in a couple of years ago as a visiting fellow, and I've been hired on as assistant professor. So my work is around the history of systemic and structural racism, and my main focus for the past 27 years has been police violence against the African American community, and riots, and prison system, and slavery. Okay. And I've done a lot of work, probably more than any other artist probably in the world, on U.S. racial violence against Black. I've done work around civil rights from the Alabama church bombing victims to Emmett Till, to Medgar Evers, to people who are lesser known who've been assassinated, to work around Sean Bell, Amadou Diallo, and other people that people tend to forget. And just showing the history and the pattern and paralleling lynching with the prison system and slavery and lynching with shooting of unarmed Black folks, and how pretty much most of the time it ends with acquittal. And we can talk about Red Summer for a while, but it concerns me that I think we're approaching Red Summer again. We're in it right now. And one thing about this current generation of people who are protesting, they're not buying the arrest. They were hoping that after they're charged the officer with murder, third-degree murder, they thought this was going to quell everything. This generation said, no, we're not buying it. You fooled us before. I mean, Philando Castile, I mean, we can talk many more, Freddie Gray. You can't fool this current generation. Yeah. And I think many of us are familiar with the LA riots in 1992, or the LA uprising. But we need to remember that reaction was based on the not sentencing the 4 officers. We just got this reaction from the actual event. Yeah. And what concerns me right now with current administration, we're one tweet away from, a dozen LA riots at one time.
Yeah.
And it really, I'm scared of very few things right now. I'm very concerned about where this could turn, and it could turn very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the sentencing, if charges are dropped,
Yeah.
because I think someone on the radio or who gave a speech today talked about, the police force in New York is 40,000. That's great. 40,000 doesn't matter if you have 8 million people.
Yeah.
And you just get 10% of those people upset. The police can't handle it, nor can the National Guard.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Um,
So I don't want to sound like Mr. Gloom and Doom, but I'm just saying what's on my mind right now.
well,
And yeah.
when you and I talked the other day, I immediately thought, I want you to come on here, and I don't have a huge following on here, but I think there are people that I think as many people as possible need to hear what you have to say because of your perspective. And when we met, you showed me several artifacts, and you showed me shackles from a child slave.
Yes.
You showed me the bill of sale of a 9-year-old girl from one Richmond, Virginia family to another Richmond, Virginia family.
Yeah.
And this is not all that long ago. And I think, I'm looking for my place in this. What can I do to help? And I feel like, there are places to give, and you can offer help, and you can read, specific people need specific help. That's good. But what, I'm where are we, man? What can we do? It's such a problem. And Paul, what is racism based on? I know it's economic, and I know that slavery was economics. Is that the root of all of this?
Well, my ancestors were brought here not to be part of capitalism. We were the capital in capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at 400 years ago, slavery built this country. If you look at cotton sales alone in 1860, it equaled $400 million. That would equal $5 billion a day today. So I think there's Chad with the thumb.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave Chad a book as well. It's called Black Fortune. It talks about the first 6 billionaires after Reconstruction. There were people that went from being millionaires from being slaves to being millionaires. And it wasn't just a few, it was a bunch. And ironically, this past weekend was the anniversary of Black Wall Street. And people are talking about it, but they're not talking about it in a way that they should. They didn't talk about the 300 white people who looted the Black community in Greenwood, Oklahoma, who burned 34 city blocks of Black community, burned the post office, burned the stores, burned the churches. And they arrested 6,000 Black people, left 10,000 Black people homeless, and they used aircraft dropping dynamite onto this Black community, all because of an unsubstantiated rumor that a Black man attacked a white woman in an elevator when he most likely just tripped over her while leaving. Now, if you look at what happened in Central Park recently, you can understand how racially charged, after I told you about the circus workers and them being accused, and what happened with Black Wall Street, they were just using that as an excuse. And the same thing happened in Wilmington, North Carolina as well, with the destruction of that community in 1898. We're talking like they were thriving Black communities. So
once they start thriving, then is that just taking money away from the white folks who say,
exactly.
Screw it, we're going to snuff that out?
Okay, Ida B. Wells, anti-lynching crusader. She started anti-lynching not because her friends were accused of rape or murder. She had 3 friends that opened a grocery store near a white grocery store. Her 3 Black friends, they thrived. They did well. They were picked up and lynched. It's about economics. And it's about destroying Black communities. Even here in Richmond, where you and I are right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 95 strategically ran through the black community, and it went, if you look at 95 and other highways across the country, they've strategically gone through black community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a book about that.
Yeah, so I can ask anyone who's, you can chime in. Give me a nice black neighborhood in America. Where does it exist?
Yeah.
Give me, it has to be 90% black owned and it has to have thriving black businesses.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
And the disparity in wealth right now, it's not just black and white disparity, it's also white and white disparity. And I think there's many factors that are contributing to the uprise right now. And I think a lot of it has to do with the healthcare, unemployment, student loans. And I do mean that $1.7 trillion in student loans. And I think this new generation is rebelling and they're not believing the administration, not just this administration, but any administration right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, Antifa, I mean, they are more powerful right now than the police force. Mm-hmm. We had a police station in Minnesota burned, 3rd precinct. In all my research, I have not seen a police station burn. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen the cops so scared. I mean, even in New York City, you see the guy in the SUV run through the crowd.
Yeah.
Those are nerves. Yeah. They didn't intentionally do that. They're losing it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't really answer your question. It is economic power. It's about power.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say it. I have nothing to lose right now because I am so angry. I'm next to Broad Street here.
Yeah.
And, you know, first night, businesses that had, you know, Black Lives Matter, I didn't have a problem. Mm-hmm. The next night, windows were busted out, mainly because the police overreacted and shot tear gas into a peaceful crowd. And they got angry and then they went and busted glass. And I opened my back door and I just heard it. Mm-hmm. And this morning I go outside and I see these boarded up buildings and there's a Black Lives Matter on almost every single wall. Mm-hmm. But I got to ask, do Black lives matter if you don't have black employees in a city that's 50% black and 40% white? Do Black lives matter if you are complicit and you allow this hostility and abuse to continue and normalize it? So I'm just going to say, I mean, I'm really concerned about the hypocrisy. There has to be truth, reconciliation, and genuine action to support and address the disparities that exist today. So I know I'm just going on, Mike.
Go on, man.
Right now.
No, go on.
I mean, this past weekend again was the 99th anniversary of Black Wall Street. Is that a coincidence that this is happening now? You know, we're repeating so many things that 100 years ago, the pandemic. And what happened also after the last pandemic and the last race riots were the most stringent and aggressive anti-immigration bills were passed. The 1924 Johnson-Reed Act, it limited immigration to the United States to only 2%. And that 2% had to come from Northern Europe, or Western Europe, not Eastern Europe. And listen to this, coincidence? It banned all Asians from coming to the United States, banned. And this is also during the time, 1920s was the rise of the Ku Klux Klan.
How is it? I mean, I mean, I understand history repeating itself, but it's chilling that it's 100 years later. I mean, like almost exactly. It's Paul. What can be done? I mean, on a personal level, I'm on a group chat with some friends I went to college with. I went to a very conservative college, and everybody on this chat is white. And my comment was that these riots and I'm bothered when...
Oh, I got to say, riots, uprisings.
Well...
Some people, we talk
yes,
about that.
Absolutely. That's a better word, and that's why you're my friend, because you keep me straight. So that's better. But as they were being called riots, and I said, this is mass despair. This is 400 years of being fucked. And then you pile on it a quarantine for a couple months, and then 40 million people out of work, and then the most graphic murder playing out drip, like a slow drip murder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this calls for love. This calls for compassion. This does not call for judgment. This does not call for people saying they're just hurting themselves. This is on just a mass human tragic scale. And
Mm-hmm.
all I know to do is be good and offer help where I can and try to offer insight. I'm like, well, Paul knows. I'm going to get him out and tell as many people what he's told me as I can. So, what is there an answer? And I'm talking with Paul Rucker, my good friend, who's an artist and musician and a historian of racial injustice in our country. What can be done?
Well, there's a lot of false narratives out there right now. People want to believe that they have what they have because they're smarter or that they worked harder. That this disparity is because, well, some people are more evolved than others.
Mm-hmm.
They have to acknowledge the cruelty, the systemic and structural racism that takes place here every single day.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter that I'm an assistant professor at VCU. It doesn't matter I have a Guggenheim Award and dozens of other awards and that I'm doing pretty well as an artist. I'm still a black man, and I still hear people locking their cars when I walk by.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fact in America. And again, we can't go bird watching. We can't go jogging. There's so many things. Every day I walk out the door, I wonder if I want to make it back safely. When I come back to my house, and I have a nice house, some people look at me like, what are you doing at that house?
Mm-hmm.
And that happens regularly.
Yeah.
And I was telling someone recently, I used to have nice cars. I used to drive a 280ZX Turbo, and I used to have and I would get stopped all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now I drive a Honda Element.
Yeah.
Because I almost got tired. I just got tired of dealing with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, the truth is, I think that we really have to have we have to address the disparity, because the things that are not said are the things that are most powerful.
Mm-hmm.
The things that are not said
Yes.
are the things that are most powerful. If you're complicit in something, if you benefit from a system that's broken and you don't speak up,
sure,
you're just as guilty. You're just as guilty.
Money. Yeah.
And I didn't understand, being a feminist. I didn't understand that my ability to walk down the road without being harassed was a lot easier than someone else's.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it took me a while. I mean, really, honestly, into my 20s to really understand.
Well, Dave Chappelle had that great bit about when he was early on in his career, and some guys had him, do a private show, and they gave him $25,000 cash in his ride on the subway back out to his hood, and he it was just freaking him out that he had this money on him, and then he said, "Can you imagine what it must be like to have a pussy?"
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I mean, sorry for the graphic joke, people, but that's hilarious. I mean, it is so true. And
that's one of the best Chappelle jokes there. I mean,
yeah.
But it's like he empathized. It's different though, because he could put the bag down. You know what I mean?
Right, but he got an inkling of what that must be like, and
right.
Talk about that. Go back to 1619. I mean, what? So we had slavery, and then what? And by the way, if anybody wants to educate themselves, that 1619 podcast that was done by the New York Times is pretty. It steps it out, and it's pretty darn informative. And another good thing that I learned from was the documentary. I think it was called 13th. Did you see that I think it's on Netflix, about the 13th Amendment, the abolition of slavery and the way it was worded and everything that I'm going to let you say right now.
Yeah, basically the 13th Amendment made sure that black people kept working for free. So there was a convict leasing program, like during the time when after slavery ended, in quotation marks, they still needed people to pick the fields. So prisons would lease convicts out to do the work in the fields.
Mm-hmm.
And they would pick people up randomly. And if you were black,
for
or
loitering,
anybody, you'd be picked up
jaywalking. Yeah.
for jaywalking, walking along the railroad tracks, or
Mm-hmm.
loitering. Those are all offenses that
Mm-hmm.
you could be picked up for, and you'd be forced to work for long periods of time, even after your sentence ended. You know, they would keep you working. Actually, there's a Family Guy episode where you guys were picked up and made to
Mm-hmm.
work,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a perfect example of. Yeah, I know. Someone said convict leasing. What the hell? Yes, that actually existed.
Yeah.
And
Well, Peter went to Washington and lay with me. Peter Sackett, who's, you know, we've lived in a bubble. I grew up in a bubble, and it wasn't until
peonage,
you
yes.
know, wasn't until I moved to bigger cities and was exposed to more that I started to really understand things. And
Yeah.
not saying that if you don't leave a smaller town, you're not going to understand things, but that for me was my awakening, and meeting my friend Al Thompson in New York, meeting everyone that I've met from the Cleveland show.
Hmm.
Um, you listen, and I think that's really what people have to do now, because so many people just want to dismiss things as you're a naive white boy. No, that's why Paul's here, because he's teaching us, and it's you have to listen, and you have to in the Cleveland show writers room, I'm like, wait, do you really get hassled by cops? Like, talk to me. And all the black writers are like, are you fucking kidding? And so, like, oh, to talk to me, like, what? Talk to me. What is life like? And so I really believe that if people listen, they can empathize and maybe bring about some change. I don't. This is just me talking, and I'm trying to make sense of all this. It's been a very emotional week,
Hmm.
watching everything happen, and I'll let you talk.
Well, I'm a Stark Raven Family Guy fan. I know I have episodes memorized, and I remember one of the most memorable episodes was when you guys went to L.A. and you did photo ops with you getting beat by the LAPD. Remember
Hmm.
that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
it's like satire for me has been it's been my therapy, honestly.
Hmm.
I need to know that people actually understand the horrors of the world.
Hmm.
And I think it maybe as twisted as, a therapist talking to children about how they've been molested by showing them puppets
Hmm.
versus pointing it out on their own bodies. I mean, but I think satire is a way for us to actually address things that are really difficult to talk about, because there's things you guys did on Family Guy and Cleveland Show you couldn't do in real life.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's not a new saying, but truth in comedy. I mean, you got it. If it's all rooted in truth, and there are
Yeah.
horrible truths out there that you make light of, and it's funny, and then you go back to your dealing with whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so talk to me about whatever you want to talk about. I just love listening to your perspective.
Well, I mean, I just have the big warning. Again, I'll say we're one tweet away from Civil War Part Two. And I told my friend the other day that, people used to think that Russia was the biggest threat, China was the biggest threat. No, white supremacy in America is the biggest threat to America,
Yeah.
period. And you got to think about it. To save these four people from beating Rodney King, they acquitted them. And it cost over $1 billion in damage in 1992. Over 7 days, 63 people were killed. 2,383 people were injured, and over 12,000 people arrested.
Hmm.
So you think about that. You think about that was a different point where people were, okay, that happened, and sure, there was looting and death, but what could possibly happen at this point during this pandemic, during this level of unemployment, during this level of disparity in
Yeah.
wealth
And despair.
and despair and anger? And I think it's not going to end well. But is there hope? Yeah, there is hope. And the system, if it's not working for everybody, it's not working. Period.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we really have to actually have more altruism and more empathy and understanding and proactive with how we take care of each other,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
But that is an issue because, unfortunately, this country was not built on altruism and kindness. It
No.
was built on the backs of others. I mean, if you look at who built the railroads, the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
What happened after they built the railroads? The Chinese Act of 1882, Chinese Exclusion Act.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
And what happened after that? Chinatowns were burned down across the country after that. And these are the things that were not taught in school. Now, if you look at history through the lens of what you were taught in school, you're being lied to. All of our history books, they lied to us.
Right.
Howard Zinn wrote a book that just laid it out.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need a new book. The book's already there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we've talked about Lumpkin's jail.
Yes. Yes.
A horrible, horrible place here that was basically a cage for the hardest to tame coming off the boat. And
Mm-hmm.
is there a plaque there now or something? I mean, it's hardly recognized.
There's little things there. I mean, it's squared in this. You can see the outline, and there needs to be something done with the slave burial ground. I mean, there's no monument in the United States to acknowledge slavery.
Mm-hmm.
I actually been working on a project. I actually bought about 20 domain names, nationalslavemonument.com.org. I actually had 20 domain names, and they were available. You know how difficult it is to find a domain name sometimes?
Jesus, yeah.
They were all available, and I was going to do an art project with them, but I kind of got discussed it, and I kind of decided to move on to something else.
Yeah.
But there's no acknowledgement. The only thing that we have in this country is the plaque on the side of the White House that acknowledge the slaves that helped build the White House. And there is a slave burial ground monument in Tribeca neighborhood of New York. I don't know if you've been there or not.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the North had slaves. There's an estimated 15 to 30,000 slaves buried in the Tribeca neighborhood. Some as young as 5 years old, and you can tell that they were worked to death because of the bones. Their arms are bent. Imagine working a 5-year-old to their dead, and that's something this country did.
Yeah.
But even here in Richmond, I mean, the history with the well here. The medical school here at Richmond, Virginia. They used to pay people to go rob graves of black people, and they'd use black people for medical experiments, as far as practicing surgeries and everything, and just dissecting the body.
As if they were human.
Oh, this subhuman.
I'm kidding. Yeah. So it's
and the same with the gynecological doctor who experimented on black women, black slaves. And sometimes he didn't use anesthesia. He actually asked the slaves that he was operating on and experimenting on to assist in the procedure. His statue was recently taken down in New York. He had a statue.
Who?
I forgot his name. Does anyone know his name? You can put it down in the bottom. I hate saying the wrong name. But yeah.
You probably got very good grades. You remember all kinds of things.
I was a lousy student.
Really?
Yeah, I'm probably one of the few Guggenheim fellows in the whole history that doesn't have a college degree. I'm a dropout.
Okay. Well, you probably put down the real answers to questions and they couldn't deal with it. I'll go with that.
Yeah, I want to answer this question here. Is it true that police were originally organized to control slaves? Yes. So if you look at the history of policing, like Baltimore, for instance, the Uniform Order of Police started in 1863. 1863 is the same year as the Emancipation Proclamation. But of course, we know that only freed slaves in the southern states. So places like Maryland and the other states that were not part of the Confederacy still had slavery going on for another 2 years. So the police are about controlling the recently freed slave population. So the police work. So basically, the police are doing their job. And I'm not going to pretend that the system is broken. The biggest realization of the past 10 years was realizing that, yeah, overseers, thank you, Chad, but it's really about control. Yeah, J. Marion Sims.
Yeah,
It's
Liz
gospel.
Harding put that up a second ago too. So
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm not always looking down. Whoever got that, we should have trivia. Okay, what year was the
okay.
Spanish-American War? What year was the Spanish-American War, and who was president? Who can answer those
Mm,
two questions? First answer gets absolutely nothing except the satisfaction of getting the answer right.
that's right.
I wonder,
Uh,
can you? I guess you can look up the answer on Feel
yeah.
Smart on your phone.
Yep. Yep.
No
Lifeline,
takers.
internet lifeline.
Yeah,
Um, uh,
it's 18, McKinley, and it's 1898, but we'll go there.
Hollywood Squares. Yes, somebody's thinking that I should do my Family Guy characters in Hollywood Squares.
That would be great.
Yeah. So,
That would be great.
1812,
1898.
1998.
1898. You got it. Is there a
Wow.
delay in this, by the way?
I think it takes a little bit. I mean, I don't know. That was my
Yeah.
college roommate, Hoagie
McKinley.
Brown,
Yep.
McKinley. Um, so, yeah, Paul, what can we do? How do we just talk to people that don't? I want to talk to people without getting upset. I want to be able to um, get people to listen, and that's why I want people to listen to you. And I want to do this again and again. I want to people just. There was a great post that Neil Tyson put up the other day on
Mhm.
his Twitter that was a quote from one of the astronauts going up and looking down at the Earth from 250,000 miles away and
Mhm.
just immediately realizing that it's all one. Everyone is one. And, his quote said something like, I want to take the politicians and grab them by the scruff and say, look at this, you motherfuckers. And,
Mhm.
how, I mean, is it just on an individual level? I mean, what can you do other than be kind and be giving and listen?
I think, like I said earlier, it's truth, reconciliation, and action. We have to take action.
Yeah, here's a good one from Kelly. Elect people who make police reform their top priority.
The the police unions are really powerful. They're very protected. I've done so many projects to address police violence. And when Freddie Gray was murdered in uh, Baltimore in 2015, uh, there was stories about steroid use. The police union is so strong that, yeah, sure, we'll get drug tested, but we're not going to get tested for steroids.
Hmm.
That's how well. And when police have 48 to 72 hours before they get interrogated for a crime, that's the
Yeah.
police union that makes sure that they can corroborate their story. So the 6 officers that were responsible for Freddie Gray's death went into the police station, not in handcuffs at the same time, and walked right back out. And they were all later acquitted.
Hmm.
And it was all theater. And even having their own medical examiner, like even recently, with the recent case with George Floyd, saying, oh yeah, it was his health or something, and now getting the independent exam to say,
Yeah.
no, this was murder.
Yeah.
This is so the police themselves.
Hmm.
So, and right now they're having a difficult time firing the officers in New York who ran into the crowd because they have a stronger union than the one in Atlanta, where
Hmm.
the two officers were recently fired in Atlanta for their actions of beating protesters that were on the ground.
Yeah.
So, depending on what city you're in, you have different protections as a policeman. But ultimately, policemen, even when they get charged, they don't usually get charged for murder. They get charged for falsifying evidence, like the one that killed Walter Scott in North Charleston. He shot Walter Scott in the back and went and planted evidence. He falsified.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, I imagine, you try to put yourself, you try to, there's no excuse. There's no
Mm-hmm.
excuse. But it's like, are they driving around terrified in neighborhoods where they feel like they could be targets? Where does this come from? Is it back? Thomas Jefferson had a quote about he wanted to get rid of slavery, but it would be like having a wolf by the ears and having to let it go, and you don't know what the repercussions.
Oh,
I may be wrong with
Thomas
that.
Jefferson's not the best example with
Well, and I was the other thing I was not even shocked to learn was that Sally Hemings was 14
yes, he knew
when,
he knew her when she was born, okay?
yeah.
And they always say he fathered 6 kids with her. No, he raped her. He kept her in a room under the house, and he was, she was his property.
Tell me where people can read it. Where did you get that information? Where can people go to really to hear, to see that? Because if you say that, oh, that I don't know, that's so long ago. I don't know if I believe that this great
Hmm.
man.
You
Where?
just I research all the time to get the real story. I
Yeah.
mean, we're just lied to so much, and I realized that I would get in these debates with people, and even if I remember getting in an argument with a discussion with a woman in the airport because she thought that black men had an advantage over white women in the job market. I'm thinking, you got to be kidding. And I told her that a white woman without a high school education is more likely to get a job than a black woman with an associate's degree.
Mm.
She said, I don't believe that. That's not true. It's like, it's true.
Hmm.
So I do a lot of Pew Brookings study, and I just do a lot of research.
I'm not trying to dispute. I'm just trying to
Oh no,
say if I tell somebody this, they're gonna be like, well, what?
yeah, it's tricky though because you can't trust the internet. I mean, we're old enough to
No.
remember where you had to go to the library and look in the card catalog and
Yeah.
read things because in order for something to go to print years ago, it had to be
Vetted.
legitimized.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now people are putting misinformation, disinformation up online to control the narrative.
Right.
And there's a lot of false narratives out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
And people are mentioning some good books in the thread here.
yeah.
And
Yeah. Somebody, I think Kelly asked, what are 3 must-read books?
oh
What
my
would you say?
goodness. Oh gosh.
The
Actually,
Bible,
you know what?
um,
My partner, she's still on here, Ailish.
Quran.
Ailish knows books better than I do. So, Ailish, do you have any 3 recommendations of books?
Hi, Alish. We'll wait for them to come up.
Yeah. But I think there's definitely a lot of good books out
Well,
there. I think,
and
yeah.
and for lazy people like I can be sometimes, did you see the documentary 13th? Did you see that?
No, I've been
Uh,
talking about it for 15 years. I'm a big admirer of DuVernay's work, but
okay.
I've been using it in my
That's
research.
easy. You pop that
Yeah,
on 13th. It's about the 13th Amendment. Also, the
yeah,
1619 podcast is very good.
yeah.
Just paints a picture, and it's about the things that were cut out of the Declaration of Independence
Hmm.
and the
Oh yeah,
Constitution, and just this is our DNA, Paul. This is what our country,
yeah.
it's baked in, as somebody said today.
Hmm.
It's I don't know, the new
Yeah,
Jim Crow.
yeah.
My
That's
friend Jay
one.
Lee.
That's actually you remember Screaming Jay Hawkins, singer,
No.
blues singer. He had this album. I think it was the most brilliant title. It's called Black Music for White People.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot of things that are for white people. I mean, I haven't seen 21 Years a Slave out of all my research, and I'll probably never see it.
Well, there's a 12 years to slave.
12 Years a Slave.
Yeah.
Actually, there's 12 Years a Slave, and there's also a book called 21 Years a Slave. I actually
Okay.
own that. That's the reason I say that. So
Okay. Well, yeah, we know you. We know you're not wrong about anything, Paul.
I'm not. I'm always wrong.
I'm kidding.
I'm hoping to be wrong about the next few months. I really am. But
Yeah. Paul, where are we, man? So you told me the other day, you wouldn't be surprised with martial law here pretty soon. You wouldn't be
mhm.
surprised with national curfew. You wouldn't be
Yes.
surprised with, where are we going and how the hell are we getting out of it? And what is our hope come November?
Well, I think the period between if someone loses or not, if they lose it, the transition period is going to be one of the roughest times in American history, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really, I'm concerned every time there's a protest because there are a few people that have died so far in these protests. But the white militia guys with the semi-automatic weapons were here the other day. And you know, I'm hoping that there's not a slip because these guns are dangerous.
Yeah.
And it would not take much. I mean, I think you and I are, you know, Kent State, there's the Orangeburg massacre. There's these incidents where the National Guard messed up, and we're relying on the National Guard now. And
Yeah.
I think you can't solve a problem. I think that we needs to be put in perspective. Why are we enduring tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in expenses and damage to protect one man from being convicted of murdering a black man?
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to wonder. It's like, is it worth? So what can we do for lasting change? How can we help? I'm seeing that. What can we do for lasting
So
change?
many people are asking that. I'm asking that.
I'm saying again, we got to have truth and reconciliation. If you, as a white person, go to your job space and everyone around you is white, and you know that there's a black community, and you say, yeah, we got black employees, it's the janitor or the security guard, you can speak up about that.
Mm-hmm.
And don't say there are no qualified candidates, because there are.
That's good.
I mean, that's actually a big one. Are you willing to give up some of your salary? I just did a fundraiser on my birthday on the 29th of April, and during that fundraiser, I raised $3,000 for food banks, one in Seattle, Baltimore, and Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
So be willing to give up what you make if you're able to.
Yeah.
Please do. Strangely, I predicted riots at that day too. I didn't think they were going to happen until September or October, when unemployment was running out, but things are speeding up. But I think, what can we do? When you see someone homeless, don't think that they're there because of their own choosing or because of their own mistakes. We all make mistakes. We're realizing now that so many Americans, especially, are just one paycheck away from being evicted.
Mm-hmm. Especially now.
Especially now. So, and I'm going to be bold. If you make enough money and you can help someone pay rent,
Mm-hmm.
just give them the money to pay rent. Don't expect anything back.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I've
done it, and I'll do it again.
You know what happens? You live a happy life that way when you give.
Live. I mean, how much? I mean, we need to survive, but boy, if you can keep someone else off the street.
Absolutely.
Yeah, equity. Yeah, equity means equalizing. We got to give.
Yeah.
And again, this disparity in wealth, and you know, the richest man in the world is getting richer right now. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And when we have people who can get richer off broken system, there's no reason that a medical procedure is going to cost $1,000 at one hospital and $25,000 at another hospital.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that. And capitalism again.
Yes.
And that's what Chad's saying. It is the capitalism.
It's a shiny shit that's on the TV and online that everybody needs.
But it's falling right now. I mean, we have Hertz, we have J. Crew, we have big companies that are going down. And the people, I mean, Rupert Murdoch lost $50 billion, and what's his name? Bloomberg lost $14 billion. Great, they had it to lose, but that's not part of the structure.
Do they need some help for the rent?
I think they do need some help.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe we should pitch in. Can we do a little GoFundMe campaign for Bloomberg? See how much we can raise?
Okay. Sure.
He didn't do so well in that presidential campaign. I think he blew a few bucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. Oh, someone just said Bezos. You know, I live in Seattle as well. I have a place there. And I mean, the richest, one of the highest per capita cities in the country has a huge homeless problem. And one person that lives there could actually eradicate the homeless problem.
Mm.
How? Chris Cholar, amazing guitars. Sorry, there's some beautiful people out there.
Yeah, man, shout it out. I'm glad I didn't turn it off. And actually, they don't. In the past, they've been like scrolling all over your face like that. You got to figure it out, because you're kind of.
I'm moving to the side.
Yeah, no, you got that. I like this now.
Yeah. It's sickening. Yes, it is very sickening. Yeah. But they don't care. They don't.
Yeah. Well, and why is that? You just get so far removed. You don't know. I know a lot of people that don't really know any black people other than the people that are working for them or bartending for them or whatever.
Oh man. You know what? I was working at this college. I was a visiting professor in Baltimore, and they temporarily put me in this freshman dorm. And I remember going through the lobby one day, and there was a spill, and the student worker behind the counter said, "Hey, could you get that? There's a spill there." And I remember reacting like, oh, he thought I was a janitor
Mm,
because he hasn't seen anyone that looks like me that's a professor. They have
mm,
very few black professors, not just there, but most colleges across the country.
right.
And I realized when I would go to the cafeteria that the black workers were almost invisible to the students. And
Yeah.
that's what we have. But my point is, you just brought a point to we normalize homelessness. We are used to walking outside and walking by people who are living on the street,
Yes.
and that is a
And being a
microaggression.
little afraid, and being a little afraid to engage
And,
them.
and creating their own, creating the story about why they're there. Now, Bezos does the same thing at a higher level.
Yeah.
He's used to people suffering, and he's on top. So he's normalized that he's there because he's smarter and that he worked harder, and he
Yeah.
deserves to have what he has.
Right. Right. Paul, I hate to say, I think this thing is going to cut us off at the top of the hour.
Oh,
Do you want to do this
well,
again?
we can do this again. Actually, I think we need to, and I want to come a little more prepared and look at solutions. Honestly, I like the vomit thing there.
Yeah. Um, do you, do you want to jump back on tomorrow? I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to figure out, if people are
you
listening, if they
know,
want to jump back on, or we can do it another time. We can get it straight.
my short answer is the last 2 nights before last night, I was up until 4 o'clock because I'm
All
one
right.
block away from the police station, and I
Go to
got tear
sleep.
gas here. Yeah. So,
Go to sleep.
but I really wanted to meet you tonight. But can we do
Yeah.
this next week?
Yes, anytime, Paul. Paul
Okay.
Rucker, you're not your website is paulrucker.com.
Correct.
You have a little bit of stuff on Instagram, but not much. What's the best way to find out more about you? Just go on your website.
This website, paulrucker.com. And I want
All
to say
right.
thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Mike, for your time and,
Yeah, man.
bringing folks out. And I really appreciate this very much because it just needed to let it out. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Let's do it next week. And there's Sarah saying, "Hey,"
Hey, Sarah.
and yeah, let's do it next week, and maybe we'll do it on YouTube. I got to get over I got to get the technical stuff. So if anybody cares, I might jump on there tomorrow night. Oh, we got another 2 minutes.
Oh,
Got the
cool.
2 minute warning. Oh, it took me a minute to get online earlier.
Yeah.
So tomorrow, I'm not sure what I'll do tomorrow. I may get my friend John Dow on here from South Sudan.
Yeah.
There's a few other people I want to reach out to, and this is just a time to find common ground and be educated. And you certainly are, and you pass so much of that along to me. And I'm glad so many people have jumped on here tonight. And Paul Rucker,
Yeah.
you're amazing, man.
Thanks, man. And last thing is be fearless. Be fearless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fear is, and we got about another minute. Fear is a big thing in
Hmm.
all aspects, and you have to get over fear, and you just have to know that you got one life, and you may as well be for real or be for Roni, and
Exactly. Exactly.
go for that thing. To tie it back into all the ones before, go for that thing that feels right to you and feels good and
Yeah.
positive and authentic.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
all right, Paul. Well, stay safe down in the protest zone. In the what did you call it earlier? Not a riot, but
It's an uprising.
an uprising.
Uprising.
All right. So
Yes.
anyway, really appreciate you, Paul. Much love to you, man. And
Appreciate you. Much love to you. And you got a beautiful, beautiful following here, man. Thank you all, guys. I love the love on the bottom there. The
thank
hearts.
you.
Great.
All right. We'll do this again next week, and we'll nail down a day, and I'll tell everybody, and keep an eye out for more posts about the rest of the week.
Sounds great, Mike. Take
All
care.
right. See you, Paul. Be good, man.
Yeah. Bye
Bye.
now.